What's up, everybody, and welcome to Inside the Game, your true source for everything in the world of video games. We have an excellent show lined up, but before we get to that, don't forget to check us out live September 17th to the 18th as we're back with The Big Game, a charity stream for big brothers and big sisters. Swing by, help support a great cause. Well, what's coming up on today's episode? Let's get into it with the rundown.
The audio in this game kind of suited perfectly.
Well, guys, we had some news come up this week in the world of Halo Infinite, and things haven't really gone according to plan. Jin is back with a new story for the Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut.
AC Valhalla Siege of Paris DLC.
We mentioned starving to death at the beginning.
Alright, so the Mexico majors have come and gone, and it was a week filled with some exciting matches.
Looks like another great episode, but don't forget, you can always be a part of our show by going to InsideTheGame.ca or hitting us up in Discord, where there you can submit your clip to end off our show. So let's get started with today's episode. Here's Corey and Steve with some Omno action.
Steve, this week we're grabbing our staffs and we're surfing the sands in Omno. Alright, Steve, we're checking out a pretty cool game. I want to start by saying this game was developed by one guy, Omno. This game has been so much fun and such an interesting playthrough. We don't play a lot of these 3D puzzle platformers, I guess we can call this one. And it had a very unique style to it as far as the graphics and the music and kind of the story that it told kind of as we progressed through this game. What did you think kind of your first impressions of this Game Pass game?
Yeah, first off, I thought visually it looked stunning. It wasn't over the top graphically.
No.
It was very simplistic, but it was like the pastel colours. It set the environment and it suited this game. Mm-hmm. And even the character didn't really have a face.
No.
It was just like a round circle with two eyes on it, basically.
Yeah.
But the idea of the game is like you said, you have to go out, you're like a pilgrimage. You're checking out a lost civilization on this planet. And you're just really following the footsteps of where this civilization ended up.
Yeah.
Because this basically the planet is bare. All you have is just the creatures that live on this planet now, or this on this landscape.
Yeah.
And
there's nobody
I have
there.
to say they're very, very similar on resemblance to the animals of modern day creatures like tortoise and squirrels and things like that.
Kind of had
But
the same names too, but changed up a little bit.
But they have their own little spin on it. They could be flying and things like that. And the idea is as well that you go up to these animals as well, and you've even got a log, so you can document all the creatures that you come across in this little book of yours as well.
It's like a little
traveling.
index of them all.
But the main principle of the game is collecting orbs, these special light sources to unlock a special magical pillar that will take you on to the next part of the level of the game.
Yeah.
And then you come across puzzles in between getting these orbs as well. Some of them were pretty easy and straightforward, like just go up to it. And it's just basically jumping, a lot of platform to get to these orbs.
Yeah.
But you have to get light orbs as well to increase the power of your staff to unlock some of these achievements, basically, to make things move. And to do that, you either go up to an animal and you sort of hit the left button, and it hits his staff on the ground, and then it drops these light.
Yeah, a couple little pieces of lights.
And that's what you have to do: collect these orbs up and just solve puzzles and just go to certain areas. But it was beautifully done. What did you think of this?
Honestly, like you nailed how the story plays out here. I mean, like we said, you're on a pilgrimage. You're kind of heading through these worlds, and as you get through these worlds, it kind of gives you a percentage of completion. So you kind of know how many things there are that you can do, because you have to collect 3 orbs in each world to be able to kind of move on to the next stage. But there are a lot more than just 3 orbs in each world, so you can go around, especially if you're one of those completionists and you're looking for the 100% in this game, you can go around and spend a good chunk of time just kind of doing some of these other puzzles and getting to the other orbs, the light orbs, and being able to kind of collect them all before before you move on. But if you want, you can just collect 3 and then kind of go on from world to world. And it was interesting because every once in a while between, you know, each level, you may take a ride on like a big giant mythical creature from kind of like the stories of the world before, like you said, the civilization before. And as you progress through these worlds, you kind of unlock these little bits and pieces of the story, and you can kind of put together yourself of kind of where you're headed as you go along this pilgrimage. But I thought the idea of being able to travel from kind of checkpoint A to checkpoint B from level to level on this big, you know, giant monster or whatever it may be, and you kind of travel through, I thought that was really well done. The audio in this game kind of suited perfectly. I mean, it's kind of this mystical feel the entire time, but there's no combat in this game. It's just, you know, you're just collecting light and you're enjoying your journey from, you know, the beginning to the end. And I thought they did a great job here. I didn't have many complaints about this game other than the fact that if it went any longer than it did, I played through fairly quickly. It was about 2.5, 3 hours total. So there isn't a ton of playtime here. I think if you were to complete everything, you may be in for 6 to 8 hours if you really dragged it out. But honestly, the game kind of suit the time that it took to play. If it went on any longer, I would have felt like maybe it was getting a little repetitive, because the puzzles were definitely getting harder as you got through the worlds, and you unlocked abilities in each world that kind of help you get through some of the puzzles. And I thought that was actually probably my favorite part, is that you get, you know, like we said, you get to surf on your staff, so you're kind of going through the sand dunes and, you know, through the mountains on the snow, and you can fly with the staff, and there's a lot of cool things you can do and unlock, and it kind of opens up the gameplay a lot more as you progress. And I really enjoyed that. But if it went on much longer, I would have been like, this is starting to feel just like a little too much, you know what I mean?
Yeah, just exploring the world. It's just the same kind of thing. That's the only, like, I'm with you exactly on that. If it was any longer, I would find it a bit repetitive, because there's only so much traveling and exploring you can do on your staff anyhow. I did have a little bit of issue sometimes on the jumping motion, on trying to climb up rocks and things, because it looks like you can just grab onto the edge, and that's great. But then it doesn't make it. Then you have to walk around and try and find a suitable point where you are supposed to jump up. And like you said, the abilities, you get your quick speed dash as well, and your staff and stuff like that. But overall, it was a well-made game for one person.
Oh, for sure. All right, Steve, our travels with Omno are coming to an end. If you got to give this one a score out of 10, what are you going to give it?
I do like this game. It was, like I said, the time-wise was perfect, graphically, audio, and especially made by one person. I think he done a solid job on this game, and for that, I'm going to give it a 7.5.
You know what? I'm just a little bit higher than you because I had a blast playing this game, you know, for it being on Game Pass. But if you don't have Game Pass, it's only $20. I mean, you're not getting a huge long playthrough here, but I enjoyed it. The puzzles were well done. The environment was great. I loved exploring it, and I just honestly just had a nice relaxed time playing this game. I got to give this one an 8. A great 3D puzzle platformer that has a relaxed playthrough. It's short-lived at about 2 to 3 hours, but completionists may be able to squeeze a couple more hours out of this one.
Well, guys, we had some news come up this week in the world of Halo Infinite, and things haven't really gone according to plan. We just recently found out there will be no co-op at launch and no Forge mode at launch either, but we do know, finally, it's coming on December 8th. Corey, are these missing game modes and things a little concerning to you at all?
Well, you know what? The biggest concern, I think, just as a general fan base, if you were hoping for this game to come out, they already delayed it once. It was supposed to get launched with the consoles when they got released. And you know what? They pushed it back, and a lot of us Halo diehards were like, it's okay. Don't worry about it. We know you're doing it for a good reason.
Sure.
So it makes me think at that point, they had a lot less of the game figured out than they currently do right now, right? I mean, like, to be able to omit something as big as co-op is huge, right? And it's very troublesome to think, why is this something, is it they're just at a point now where they're like, we have to launch the game, we can't push it back again to make sure that we add co-op and forge mode before the initial release. So yeah, you're right, it's troubling to see that we're getting a game that's being released, one that we've already had pushed back, and it's not gonna be a finished product. And it just, you want it to be. It's Halo. Just give us the perfect game we all want, but we're all going to have to wait. And you were saying with the timelines, we're 3 months past launch for the co-op and then 6 months for the Forge mode, which is bonkers. I mean, why do I have to wait 6 months to play a part of the game when I paid full price for it 6 months earlier? So Nate, what do you think about this, man?
Well, I think that's, you kind of mentioned it right there. Are we going to only have to pay for a third of this game? Are we going to have to pay full price for a part of the game? Because I've seen a lot of people throw that debate out there, and you don't know what, man, rightfully so. I mean, Halo's almost always, well, it's always launched with co-op. Halo 5 didn't launch with local co-op. So that's, that was a devastation in its own. That was a big misstep in its own. So this one, man, like, my initial thoughts were, I was really upset, man. Like, I almost didn't want to play Halo for about 5 minutes. I was super furious. But I don't know. I just let everything kind of soak in a bit. And I'm like, it's just 3 months. I'm just played Halo, and I'm playing Halo 2 right now. So Halo's always a game I'm gonna go back to. That's fair. And I think every single Halo experience I've ever, like every Halo game I've ever played, I've always experienced it by myself the first time. I always play single player. Co-op is great, but you get those distractions with conversation, and it's just, it's the Master Chief, man. Like, it's not two Master Chiefs, it's the Master Chief. So as much as it's frustrating, I can wait 3 months, 6 months for Forge. That is going to be upsetting for a lot of people. Custom games is a huge part of Halo. So to see that, coming a little bit later, especially with multiplayer games coming out as frequent as they are and as good as they are, that might hurt them in the long run, taking 6 months to have that part of their multiplayer there. I think co-op will upset some people, but it's not game breaking. And I don't know. What about you, Scott? I've rambled on enough. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, in contrast to you, every time I've had Halo, of course, -5, I've played in a co-op setting the very first time. Since Halo 2. Yeah. And it's been just kind of a tradition. That's how I enjoy playing the game. There is these distractions, and everybody goes through on solo legendary eventually. But I just really enjoy that co-op experience right out of the gates. But like you said, though, it's not game breaking, because I'm still gonna have the curiosity at the very least to play the campaign. And I'm not gonna be able to wait 3 months to do that, so I'm gonna be playing regardless. And they know a lot of people are gonna think that way. I'm sure that's why they didn't delay it further, because it's better to give it to the fan base that will stick around anyway. Forge to me isn't really a big deal, but that's because I've just kind of ignored custom games. And I know that's not the normal thing for the fans. They've had a huge following with custom games, so it's a little disappointing there. I'm worried that this is going to be a trend setter of sorts with the games of service, as they call it. Because if they're releasing a game, to be hyperbolic, 20% complete, doesn't that really hurt them in the overall? Because a lot of people are going to see it, really criticize it, and then just jump off.
Absolutely. Scott, I think that's the biggest thing too, is that 343 Industries now is considering Halo as a games of service. That's the biggest thing as well that comes out of all of this, right? They say we have this free to play multiplayer experience. When's the best time to launch it? You got to start somewhere, so let's launch it now. And that's what they're looking at, right? So they want to get the game out there, let the fans who've been waiting as long as we have to finally get in and play the game, to get started, right? At least we're in the world of Halo. Dude, when I heard that they weren't bringing co-op, I was disappointed, without a doubt, right? I wanted to play that with my girlfriend because, dude, we played Gears from the minute we started till the minute it ended. That's how we played Gears. And I was looking forward to doing the same thing here with Halo. That was going to be my Halo experience. Now, can't do that. I got to wait 3 months. You know what's going to happen? I'm not going to play 3 months later. I'm not going to be on the single player side of things. That's the thing. I'll be moved on to other stuff. Nature of what we do, obviously it pushes us quickly on to the next thing. But for me, if I'm playing anything when it comes to Halo, it's probably the multiplayer. And that's where I'll be with you, all of us, right? We'll all be over there playing the multiplayer side from 3 months, 6 months, a year from now, whatever it is. We were saying this morning, Scott and I, on the Daily Show, that look at Master Chief Collection. They keep updating that game. Well, now they're about to transition over into Halo Infinite, and they're going to do the same thing here and grow it even more. So it's exciting to see Halo, but did anybody ever think of Halo as a games of service eventually? Probably not, right?
Well, and that kind of has me wondering, like, you're paying for what, just the campaign now?
Yeah.
Because the multiplayer is completely free to play.
I know.
So you're going to pay like $90 for a single player game, which you know is not like an outrageous thing, of course.
Of course not.
But for something like
But-
Halo, I don't know. It's always been co-op, so
Yeah.
this is strange, man. With the multiplayer being free, which is amazing, but it's
Sure.
it's just strange.
It's-
I think Game Pass will surely help their sales, I guess you could say. You know, like their overall
Yeah.
numbers
Yeah,
for the
their
campaign
downloads.
Yeah.
will for sure be huge because of Game Pass, I think.
It's definitely uncharted waters when it comes to what Halo Infinite is doing. But we want to know what all of you think. Hit us up at Twitter, the official ITG. Let us know. Are you excited for the next Halo? And what do you feel about the missing modes that aren't going to be there? Eh.
Is that everything? This feast has to be great.
I agree, Toka. This feast has got to be good, just like this DLC's got to be good. This week we're talking about AC Valhalla Siege of Paris DLC. This is the second DLC installment in the Season 1 pass, so I wanted to jump in and check it out and let you guys know what I thought.
And the Frankish boar with me is my advisor, Pierre.
We're greeted by two new characters in Ravensthorpe, Toka and Pierre. They're putting together a feast in hopes to kind of woo Eivor from Ravensthorpe back to Francia to help them with their cause. Toka's father, Sinric, was the Jarl of their town, and unfortunately he was killed, and one of his best friends and a right-hand man, Siegfried, is back in Francia, and he's trying to take down Charles the Fat, the king that's kind of ruling over everything right now, and he's really looking to take down the Norsemen. He's going through and pillaging Norse towns all through Francia, just to kind of, extending his arm of power or his rule. And the idea here is hopefully Eivor can go over to Francia and maybe convince Charles the Fat to not come to England and attack. So he's really just looking at his best interest for Ravensthorpe, but he is trying to help out in Francia as well with Toka, Pierre, and Siegfried. But the problem is Siegfried and Charles the Fat don't see eye to eye very often early on in the DLC story. They do come to some sort of tentative agreement, but let me tell you, these two guys don't tend to always stick to their words. So the way the story plays out past this, I'm not going to give away too much away, but it is very interesting. And that's one thing I really did enjoy about this, is the characters and kind of how they build this story so quickly. They did a really good job at getting you involved in this one early on.
Siegfried swears to be my loyal friend and protect our lands in Amiens and Rouen.
The biggest thing I enjoyed about this DLC was actually the return of the black box missions, or the assassination style missions, where you actually have to go around a particular area, find clues, or collect kind of, instruments to be able to assist yourself in assassinating a particular target. And they did a good job, because some of the ways you can kind of go about it and figure out how to kind of infiltrate into these areas and be able to assassinate your target in a very stealthy way really kind of brought back that original Assassin's Creed feel, which I wasn't really getting as much throughout Valhalla as a whole, and definitely in the other DLCs. So being able to bring this back into this DLC, I thought was a really nice touch. It was nice to be able to kind of, customize my playthrough in that sense and jump back into that, old school Ezio assassination style move. And they did a great job of presenting it here. Some of these assassinations were pretty wild.
Charles
A new mechanic they've added into the AC Siege of Paris is actually this rat pack swarm that you get in some of the tunnels and the sewer areas that you are in when you're in Paris and throughout the map of Francia. And these things are just kind of a nuisance. They run all over the floor, and you have to use your weapon attacks to kind of scatter them away into grates that you then cover up to kind of protect yourself in that area. But they can just be a pain in the butt if you land in them. They're attacking you constantly. I thought it was a nice little touch to that whole kind of environment that you get thrown into. They also have a couple new weapons available. You have the Scythe, which is a great crowd control weapon. There's a few variations of it, so go looking for those if you're interested in that weapon, as long as a single-handed short sword, a hidden one short sword that you get for completing some of the hidden ones challenges as well throughout Francia. I did enjoy that Pierre had a few different missions that you could jump into, these rebel missions, where you actually get a small band of rebels that you can upgrade as you complete these side missions. These are completely separate from the main storyline, so you don't have to complete any of them to complete the storyline. But they did a good job here, because I thought, as simple as they are, they're pretty cookie cutter, especially for Assassin's Creed missions where we're going to, collect a certain target or assassinate a certain person and that kind of thing. And, they did a pretty fun time here with the way you kind of are able to upgrade your militia, whether you want hand-to-hand combat or guys that'll support you from range, which I thought was kind of a nice touch. You can kind of upgrade that. It gives you definitely a ton of different missions to play through outside of the main story, so I thought it was a nice little added touch. As a whole, I thought the, AC Valhalla Siege of Paris DLC was actually a pretty solid chunk of DLC. I mean, you're getting 6 hours to 8 hours for the main story playthrough, depending on how quickly you run through that. And you know what? That's exactly what you needed to be able to kind of build the stories around these characters and really feel invested in this particular storyline. I did enjoy it a little bit more than the Wrath of the Druids DLC, especially in the storyline. But the one thing I think the Wrath of the Druids may have over top of Siege of Paris is the environment. I mean, Paris, they did a good job at making it look worn-torn in certain areas, especially with the, the rats in the sewers and things like that. But generally, when you run around and, you're on your mount, which you do get a bear mount in this, which I thought was really cool, so I had to hop onto that instead of the ethereal wolf that I've been riding around on for a long time. I thought the bear mount was a great addition for the DLC, so I had to get my hands on that. But, I mean, overall, Paris looked a lot like England, other than some of the, red poppy fields that you may be running through. It just, it did pull a lot of similarities. There wouldn't be as much of a difference in that as there was, say, with Wrath of the Druids, where everything was very Celtic and green, and, it just added maybe a bit of a different feel for the environment. But overall, the Siege of Paris AC Valhalla DLC was a lot of fun. I had, a good time with the story. I really enjoyed the characters. It's been a while since I've jumped back in, so it's nice to be able to kind of hop back in with a great story, play through, and have a good time. And so if you want to do any of the extra missions outside of the, the original 6 hours for the main story, you're probably looking at another 6 to 8 hours of extra side missions. So if you're looking for that completionist, it's there for you. This DLC was a ton of fun. So if you're looking for a reason to get back into AC Valhalla, the Siege of Paris DLC might be for you.
This better work.
I embrace you, demon.
Our master samurai is back. I'm talking about Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut.
I haven't seen these Mongols before. They claim to follow someone called the Eagle. I have to go back.
Jin is back with a new story for the Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut with Iki Island. That's where I went. You have to have completed up to Act 2 in order to access Iki Island. You do so by going to your journal. From there, select the Tales of Iki and then progress over to where the winds take you, because that is a cool element within the game as your guiding mechanic gets you over to Iki Island.
Tell me what you did to these people. They heard the call of the eagle.
The eagle.
For me, it was all about the next DLC. I didn't want to go back to old content I've already completed. I finished Ghost of Tsushima. I had an absolute blast. It is one memorable game. So for me, I want to know what Jin's story is next. If you have not completed Ghost of Tsushima, I highly recommend you do that before jumping into Iki Island. Iki Island plays on the memories of the past, and a lot of it is touched on Jin's father and their relationship and how that kind of progresses and so forth before the events of Ghost of Tsushima. So you might want to finish that before you tie into what we kind of have a little subtle backstory when the actual main game. So this way, when you get to Iki Island, you're already caught up knowing what goes on, and then nothing's going to get spoiled for you moving forward. So definitely recommend doing the main game, then jumping over to Iki Island, and you can then explore what seems almost to be like a pirate island in a sense. There's like shipwrecks everywhere. Again, Sucker Punch steps it up. What a beautiful world that they have created. Iki Island is outstanding. It is surrounded by what looks to be an ocean of some sort, and then there is a massive island for you to explore. I don't want to talk about too much of Jin's story and the reasoning behind him going over to Iki Island. Just know that it has a great tie-in to the main game. That was a continuation, but yet with a backstory as well. I thought it was really cool, really well done, and it gave us an excellent reason to explore a whole new region within Tsushima and why we went to Iki and who the antagonist is over there and their character, and then the world building again still continues to grow, and there are some subtle places that you visit. I thought, man, this was touching. This was really cool to experience that some of this objects in these environments come back around to the main game. I thought it was awesome that Sucker Punch was able to touch on stuff we knew about within the first game and kind of highlighted and brought to the forefront here when we go over to Iki Island. It was fantastic. You can't have new DLC without some new abilities, and well, we're getting some abilities for our horse. We've actually been given an ability to charge through the Mongols, which I thought was a pretty cool idea. Gives you the ability to charge right through them and knock them all over the place and continue on your journey. So for me, that was a nice little addition, trying to get from point A to point B. I did kind of rush through the main campaign a bit just so we can have it done for this review. And I want to go back now to venture into some of the side quests, and the tales are back too. Those cool tales that give you nice rewards and some exciting gear and things like that. There's definitely a lot to go out, gather resources, come back, craft, look to enhance some of your abilities if you haven't. New charms are now into effect, new gear, all kinds of exciting things for you to spend a lot of time on Iki Island.
Black Hand Riku, the cursed pirate captain who terrorizes Iki Island from beyond the grave.
Black Hand Riku. Didn't he die at sea years ago?
That he did. I'm Kashira. I sailed on Riku's bloodstained banner. The things I saw still haunt my nightmares.
What can I say? If you like Ghost of Tsushima, you're gonna like the latest Iki Island DLC. And a bonus, it's all free. You don't have to pay for anything. I didn't get my hands on the new latest mode of Legends. I haven't seen the new content there yet. That doesn't release until the 20th. I didn't have access to it, so I'll be jumping back into that very, very soon. However, Iki Island, though, was a great addition to the game. It's nice to be back as Jin. The combat is always fantastic to play. The world is beautiful. It is stunning. There's so much to explore, and it puts me there with a 9.
Eagle sent a scouting party to Tsushima. I knew I had to stop.
Sucker Punch continues to display what it means to create memorable experiences that allow you to believe in a fictional character, storytelling, and build upon emotion that is Ghost of Tsushima. Iki Island is the perfect expansion of all those things. I just wish it was a bit longer. Scott, we're on our PCs for another survival city builder. Scott, you and I are big fans of city builders. We tend to gravitate to these games a lot, and you know what? I was kind of in the craving for one of these games, and Patron came up and hit us in the sweet spot. Dude, I've been having a good time in the world of Patron. This is another city survival builder. What are your thoughts on it so far?
It's a specific kind of subgenre of City Builder.
Yeah.
They call it a colony sim, and I think that explains what happens in this one pretty well. You're not exactly just slapping down buildings and maneuvering all your people around. You're letting them kind of create stuff at their own pace, and you act as more of a director instead of a direct controller. And it just has a little bit of removal, and I kind of really enjoy this subgenre, I have to say.
I feel like I've done this before, though. I think that's my biggest takeaway, is I've played this game in a sense almost already, right? Like there wasn't a lot of new shocking things here to experience. There are little things will come up from the king, and he'll ask you for help, or you can decline him. And often I hit the decline button. I didn't help him. I stayed to my own little thing. Sometimes he'd take some of my villagers away. I'm like, no, I need those villagers because I need them to, fill their roles as they become the woodcutter or the hunter or work in the iron mines and all that kind of stuff, right? So you need to have this longevity looking forward, and how do you keep that going? And then the king comes in and he says, well, I want some of them, and then I need your wheat, and I need this. And I'm like, no, you don't. And I hit decline. The biggest thing for me, by declining them, and then the church would do the same thing, asking for help and stuff like that. I declined everybody, and there's just no repercussions there whatsoever. And I was kind of thought, I could just keep hitting no and keep all my stuff. But there are, you'll get rewarded for certain things, and then they'll take away from other things, and just the morale kind of goes down. But for me, the biggest thing going in, Scott, when you and I both talked about this off camera before we started, is that our people starved early when we started playing the game.
Yeah, there's a bit of a learning curve to it. It's quite a bit different than starting up a Warcraft city or something like that. You have to be much closer to the ground when you're managing the individual jobs of these people. You have to produce food first, firewood as well, to survive through the winter. Your needs are much more survival based, and eventually you get into the realm where you're creating a lot of iron, a lot of tools, and working your way up a technology tree. So it does kind of change over time, but that's just one aspect of what you're managing. The other part would be the different water throughout town. Is there jobs for everybody? And what are the morale level of these people? What are their needs? Are they happy with their religious setting? That kind of thing. And that's the only real repercussion I ever saw from declining certain king commands that come up. Is you may actually find your people becoming less safe or less religious and therefore unhappy. And that's just something that you have to manage kind of on a grander scale. So there is some depth going between the short term and the long term of this game. It was a little limited. We mentioned starving to death at the beginning. It's very hard to tell when you're approaching that issue until it's too late, and you're better off just to restart a whole other city. I had that come up twice, where I was naming my cities after Elder Scrolls locations. So the town of Gnosis is no more. Sedanin, they all starved to death too. But Cyrodiil is where I found some success. We're up into almost 100 people now, and that started working a lot better. This game doesn't do a whole lot to differentiate itself from other colony sims. That's something we've been talking about a little bit, have we played this already before? Whether it's Going Medieval or Distant Kingdoms, those are the last two that I've had for review, and there's a lot of difference where they kind of simplified this game, where it makes it a little easier for entry. You don't have to architecturally design each building. It's just already a kind of a stamp that you put down and people build it. It's a little simplified that way, but there's issues that come along with that.
Absolutely, right? Because one of the biggest things is to get started, because you want to keep your resources to a use of minimum as possible. You start off by building a tent. You got to house your people somewhere, right? So you put them in a tent. You could build a house, but I was saving to build the house after. I was looking to get my tent, get my village started, and then the ability to upgrade my tent into a house, right? We've seen this with other city builders and other survival sims like this, colony sims. Kind of like Anno 1800 comes to mind, where if you start off with a crummier home, you're able to upgrade that building and keep upgrading that until it becomes into something like a mansion, Well,
Yeah.
here you have to destroy the tent and then put down a house. So for me, I was just like, I just want to click like an upgrade tree that gives me the ability just to swap the rotation. Instead, I have to now clear a different part of the land, put a new building down, demolish that one, have everybody move in. So there's kind of a bit of a back and forth that could have been simplified just by the ability to upgrade into a house.
Yeah, everything else seems to have been simplified, but that kind of stands out as an odd one out, as well as picking different resources to gather. That's just a layer of detail that wasn't exactly necessary. I don't think it's a negative, but it's just something that you have to manage as well as everything else. It gets a little hectic or forgotten sometimes.
Well, Scott, I think we've had a good time, and I think that's the biggest thing, is I've had a good time. This has scratched that itch that I've been kind of looking for in a colony sim that hasn't been around lately. And though I felt like I played it a lot already from the past games that I've played, not much has really changed. It's kind of missing a couple features. So for me, I'm there with a solid 7.
Yeah, I agree with you there. There's some things that are missing from other similar games, like combat and that sort of thing that gets mixed up, but it was quite a satisfying experience just going on what this game has to offer. It kind of has a hard start, but a long learning curve, and that's something that becomes very satisfying. I had a good time with this one. I'm not sure if it's my favorite colony sim, but it is certainly up there. I'm with a 7.5. Patron is an accessible yet challenging colony sim experience. It has an extreme focus on micromanaging with a satisfying payoff.
Alright, so the Mexico majors have come and gone, and it was a week filled with some exciting matches. North America, we did pretty good all in all. A couple teams, you know, they didn't perform quite as well as I'm sure they would have liked. And ultimately, Space Station Gaming, I mean our world champs, they didn't make it all the way. But what we did see was history created as Team 1 earned the title of champions against Team Empire in the finals. Team 1 coming into the playoffs as underdogs, you could say, proved that they deserved the trophy. At the start of the event, they didn't look like the team that we saw by the end of the week. And I say this because with our first team we'll be covering, the Sonics, Team 1 earned a big loss in overtime. The Sonics and Team 1 started things off aggressively with a back and forth game, bantering and bickering back at each other between rounds, filling the room with as much noise as if we were at a UFC fight night with a live crowd. It went back and forth so much so that it stretched out a whole 15 rounds, and the Sonics earned their first win in the Mexico Majors. But unfortunately, this was the only win and only 2 points that the Sonics earned in the whole tournament. They came close a few times with 7-4 scores, 7-3 scores, 7-5 scores, and they were so close to knocking out Team 1 out of the tournament in their second matchup against each other. But ultimately, it did not matter.
That he can get. There's one down to the 2v1 now. Knows where another one is, and he finds it. Levy with just one more kill to pick up, and he gets himself a 1v4 clutch. Not to mention, he still has over 15 seconds to plant the case. Gonna go for that now as he finally has safe retrieval, as well as a good position to throw it down onto the ground. The first attempt being made. Mind you, Rexon is incredibly low as well. He'll have heard that drop. Rexon gonna be smart though, won't commit, but Levy will. However, Rexon shuts it down, and the Sonics take a very, very close one.
TSM, they came into the playoffs with a strong head on their shoulders. Having a great season in the North American League, they were expected to do pretty well. But again, much like the fate of the Sonics, they struggled to earn any wins in the first 2 days. On Playday 3, they earned finally their first win against the strong Team Liquid, giving them 3 points, but by the game day 3, it was already way too late for them. TSM only earning 1 win put them and the Sonics both in the 13th to 15th position bracket. Next up was the surprising Dark Zero. DZ throughout the entirety of Stage 2 forced matches into overtime, putting them in 4th place by the end of the season. Now moving into the playoffs, we saw the Dark Zero we love bring their A game, only losing 2 matches barely in overtime with scores of 8-7. This brought them to the quarterfinals, where unfortunately they could not continue their success. Being hindered with 2 of their players being physically ill and being put up against the world champs, Team 1, their fate was already set in stone. I do believe that if Dark Zero had their roster at full capacity, we may have had a different outcome. But maybe not. That Team 1 at this point was on a 5-game winning streak. But still, Dark Zero did very well and earned that 5th to 8th place position. Lastly, we had our famous Space Station Gaming, the team that went practically undefeated all of Stage 2 and were once our world champs. Going into this event, they had quite a bit of confidence and showed it. Losing only 1 match out of the 4 in their first 3 play days secured their position in the quarterfinals. But like Dark Zero, everything came crashing down in the quarterfinals when put up against Team Empire. The first match brought down a lot of Space Station Gaming's esteem, and at one point in the second match, the score was 5-0 for Team Empire. But SSG was not ready to give up. They came back and forced the last match into a 7-8 match for Team Empire. We saw the world champs we knew from 2 years ago, but at that point it was too late, putting SSG as well in the 5th to 8th place position bracket. It was a fantastic week of games, and I look forward to hopping back into Stage 3 come October. All these teams have a lot to take from this week, and I cannot wait to see what will happen come this fall.
Speak the devil's name, and the devil shall appear, Michael. You talked about it, and Dan is now coming up big. SSG are in major trouble. Rampy, though, good enough for 1, tagging on to Scyther, a 2nd lined up around the door frame, always taking some damage from the Roni of Bosco, and a Nitro Cell goes off, but it's not early enough. Bosco falls. Rampy has so much work that needs to be done. Being tracked away, he tries to contend with the Maverick, out-dueling as he has multiple angles to cover, but Empire just breeze on in. The dream for Space Station has become a nightmare, and Thinking Nade finds himself in a 1v4. They came so close, but Thinking Nade's return to the top of the stairs gets caught, and Empire move on to the semifinals.
Absolute heartbreaker there for SSG, who brought it to the very bitter end of map number 2. But unfortunately for them, it's just map number 1 that came back to bite them, and they could not fully recover.
It's been well documented that Activision has been looking at ways to combat the terrible cheating problem in Warzone. You know what? It's been so bad that some of the most prominent streamers for Warzone have actually changed games. Like Nick Merckx, Tim the Tatman have jumped over to Apex Legends, where cheating is still a thing, but you know what? Respawn has an anti-cheat in there that kind of is working a little bit better than what Warzone has. Raven Software tweeted that they've actually banned 100,000 more accounts. This was just a few days ago, and actually earlier in August they banned another 50,000 accounts. But honestly, the community's biggest problem here is the fact that you can just jump on and create another account. Activision and Raven Software have come out and said that they are going to be looking into implementing a form of anti-cheat that will hopefully solve that problem. Right now, they said their best, defense against it right now is hardware banning those serial cheaters, but the problem with that is that there's also software out there that can kind of get you past that hardware ban. So Activision and Raven Software are doing their best, but you know what, for the community, it's still probably not enough. Here's hoping that that anti-cheat that they're going to be bringing in is going to do what it's supposed to do, because that Warzone community was really thriving for a while, but once the cheaters and hackers have moved in, the quality of life in that game has gone down significantly. If you want to play that game casually, there's almost no chance now, because almost every game you jump into, there's probably someone cheating in that lobby. So hopefully they'll be able to bring in this anti-cheat system and make things, you know, a little bit smoother, especially for newer players coming into the game, especially with the Vanguard Warzone implementation. We're going to be getting a new map, so they got to get this stuff fixed before the launch of that game. So here's hoping, fingers crossed, Warzone players, we're going to be getting that anti-cheat soon.
Alright, so earlier this week we got dropped a trailer for one of my favorite game series, Destiny. Finally, we got a trailer for what's coming in February. Yes, February 22nd, 2022. We will finally be getting The Witch Queen, a much anticipated DLC for Destiny for a long time. And in the trailer, there's a few things that we can dissect from it. So, the Witch Queen is here, and it looks like she has a whole army of hive-looking ghosts that are resurrecting what looks to be guardians, possibly? I mean, it looks like we got a few different variations of these hive sort of guardian things happening. And ultimately, I mean, the new area looks incredible, breathtaking. Bungie never ceases to amaze me with their settings all of the time. And again, just look at these creatures. They look phenomenal. The artwork here is amazing. I cannot wait to fight these things. And if we're fighting some sort of hive guardian hybrid things, I'm kind of curious to see how that's going to play out with unlimited supers maybe coming towards us. Oh, I can't wait to find out. But ultimately, what's most exciting about this is it's coming out in February. February is always a dry time for gaming. And I think Destiny, they've really done a good job on shifting that big DLC drop for that time frame. Because fall is just always bombarded with games. Even this fall, we got a ton of games to look forward to. And Destiny, you know, it just being the age that it is, it might get drowned out by some of these other games. So February, it's the perfect time to launch The Witch Queen.
It's a sad time for indie game developers, and I'm especially talking about Amiga Games, who recently tweeted that they're leaving the game development for indefinite due to they're not making any profit from their latest game, The Summer of '58, due to Steam's refund policy. Now, Amiga Games makes horror walk-in simulator games that includes Locked Up, Find Yourself, Summer of '58 and the upcoming From Day to Day. And all these titles are under $10 US. But even though the Summer of '58 got very positive reviews on Steam, with about 87% of 317 recommended the game, it seems that the majority of players had bought the game, then returned it under Steam's 2-hour return policy. And this was the final straw for Amiga Games, who then tweeted, "Friends, thank you for the support. I'm leaving game development for an indefinite time to collect my thoughts. The fact is that my game Summer of '58 does not reach 2 hours of playing time by Steam standards. In this regard, a huge number of returns on the game, even with positive reviews, and I do not earn anything to create a new game. Thank you very much for supporting me. I am very glad that you like my game. But since I have no conditions to do something new, I have to do something else. I will immediately answer everyone who asks about From Day to Day. And this game will not see the light of day in the near future. See you later." Now, I can sympathise with Amiga Games, as we've played a lot of indie games for reviews, and they're only completed in within 2 hours as well, but we know they're only a small team and they put their heart and soul into their game, and some of them are really good as well. So I do believe that Steam should really rethink their refund policy.
Well, it's been almost 3 years since the doors of Vault 76 have opened, so I think it's time to revisit Fallout 76 for another review.
Chief Telemetry Officer destroyed. All personnel to destinations.
Alright, so Fallout 76. Like I said, it has been 3 years, guys. And when this game first launched, Drew and I, well, we reviewed it and I was very distasteful for it. I leveled up to maybe level 20 or so, and I had to put it down. The game was riddled with bugs, and it was just a big kind of mess overall. And leading up to that release date, I was probably the most excited I had been for a video game ever to that point. I mean, Fallout 76's reveal was out of nowhere. I just remember Bethesda dropping a tweet with this loading screen, and then them revealing Appalachia, a co-op experience in Fallout. I mean, this is something I had dreamed of for years, and me and my brothers and friends, we were all stoked. But like I said, the launch, it was rocky. I had to put it down. But here we are 3 years later, and this game has changed tenfold. I mean, you still got all that Bethesda love and flavor with, their typical Bethesda glitches, but it has come to a place where crashing is minimal. When not, it still does crash, but it's minimal. And, well, just the experience itself has just evolved into something very fun and something that you can play co-op with your friends or single player. But alright, let's maybe take a few steps back. Not everybody knows what Fallout is. So for those who do not know what Fallout is, this is a series that has been ongoing for decades at this point. I mean, back when Fallout 1 and 2 released, those were isometric style RPGs. I mean, this dates back to those early 2000s, years ago. And as time evolved, Fallout 3 came out, Fallout New Vegas, and 4, a sort of first and third person interpretation of it, and now Fallout 76. Fallout, a world filled with nuclear disaster. The bombs dropped all across the world, destroying most of life as they knew it. And with each Fallout game, you kind of enter a different timeline in different areas all across America. And with Fallout 76, we go to West Virginia and uncover the mysteries that happened in the land of Appalachia. So when the game launched, there were actually no NPCs in all of Appalachia. All your quests were given to you through holotapes or through robots. And well, I was very distasteful at the time about this. But as time evolved and the lore grew, well, then we actually got NPCs. So almost a year into the game's release, we got Wastelanders, NPCs, tons of new quests and a new currency, and ultimately this is when the game took almost a full 180. And then another year later, we have the Brotherhood of Steel campaign. And all of this, guys, has been free. Every single update that this game has received has been free. Yes, there are paid items like cosmetics and the Fallout First subscription, but ultimately, I mean, you haven't had to pay for any DLC or extra content. And that speaks for a lot coming from this sort of looter shooter MMO genre, because in Elder Scrolls Online, for instance, their not so distant cousin, I mean, that game is riddled with DLC, and rightfully so. I mean, the DLC that they implement in that is often huge new areas and a lot of content, but at least in Fallout 76 they keep expanding upon Appalachia and adding all sorts of new content that just really adds to the lore and everything that we love about the Fallout franchise. Well, now that the game has been out for 3 years, there are 3 major campaigns for you to complete. The Vanilla, which is you trying to defeat the Scorched and end the plague in Appalachia. The second one is helping the Wastelanders and deciding which faction to side with, both either Foundation or the Crater Raiders. And this is what I love about Fallout 76, is that there is a lot of choice with both the Wastelanders and the Brotherhood of Steel DLCs. You get to pick often whether or not people survive, and there's all sorts of repercussions if you do or do not. It's actually chock full of just what a lot of people would consider a true Fallout experience. And lastly, the Brotherhood of Steel, the most recent DLC that's been implemented in Fallout 76. I absolutely loved it. It gives you high level gear. It's got all sorts of different spots in Appalachia that you have never visited before that look incredible. The Brotherhood of Steel in their infancy stage, and ultimately mold them into what you want the Brotherhood of Steel to be in Appalachia. Now I'm quickly going to brush up on the actual RPG mechanics side of Fallout 76. When it first launched, it was fairly solid, and they've really just built upon what they had there and just made it way more accessible to players. You now have the option to use legendary perks, which just give high-level players more stuff to grind for. And of course, crafting in this game is huge. You craft weapons, you craft armor, and most importantly now, with the most recent update over the last couple months, is that you can craft legendary weapons. Yes, if you get any weapon, it could be the most basic weapon, you just need a couple different types of material, and then you can turn it into a 3-star legendary. This just makes farming legendaries a lot easier in my opinion, and especially if you just really like a type of weapon, well then you can just kind of keep re-rolling it. So with that and everything else I've mentioned, I cannot stress to you guys enough that this game is a must grab. Even if you want a single player experience, this game can definitely bring you that now. Might not necessarily, unfortunately, be, that Fallout 3 or Fallout New Vegas experience that you were hoping for, but I definitely can say that you will lose yourself in the world of Appalachia 100%. So I guess if I was going to score Fallout 76 in 2021, well guys, I would have to give it a solid 8.5. It's not obviously perfect, but the games never are perfect, but having all these updates that we've been given for free and a roadmap now showing the next 6 months of content, I mean, we have all sorts of stuff to get excited for, so I have to give this one an 8.5. Exploring Appalachia has never been better now in 2021. The addition of free DLC, constant updates and events, this game is a must try. Playing co-op Fallout has turned into the experience we always wanted way back in 2018.
Thank you for hanging out with us, and of course, you can always be a part of our show and end off with the clip of the week. All you have to do is go to InsideTheGame.ca or hit us up in Discord, where there you can submit your clip and be a part of our show. This week, we have Ashton hitting it up in some Apex. Check it out. Until next week, everybody, thank you again, and we'll see you inside the game.
Reloading.
Fire, friends. Enemy recharging shields.